You've been waiting in a small exam room for a while and decide that you need to stretch your legs. You can hear murmured conversations as you wander past procedure rooms, offices, and other exam rooms. For the most part, it looks like a typical doctor's office with exam rooms lining the colorful hallway. To your left is a set of swinging doors, clearly marked as a restricted area. Curious and not seeing anyone around to stop you, you push the doors. You expect them to be locked, but instead you find that they open easily. You now stand in a quiet hallway, lined with more doors with small reinforced glass windows. You peek through the window and see what looks like a deep freezer. Intrigued, you glance around and twist the door handle, quietly pushing the door open and stepping inside. Quickly and quietly crossing the room, you examine the latch on the lid and find no lock. You open the container and remove a tray of items stored within. Within seconds of touching these items, intense pain radiates through your bare hands, forcing you to drop the container. The items tumble to the floor, shattering and destroying the contents. The destroyed contents would be the epicenter for a controversial court ruling in 2024 and would capture the attention of a nation. Welcome back to While You Were Sleeping, where we explore some of the curious, cautionary, and downright bizarre government activities that occur when the rest of us aren't watching. The clandestine meetings, secret alliances hidden by media coverage of smoke and mirrors to hide what legal decisions mean now and for the future. In this episode, we're taking a look at a recent Alabama Supreme Court ruling involving two families, frozen embryos, and just how far the tentacles of law can reach. The contents you inadvertently destroyed? Test tubes of frozen embryos being stored in deep freeze at the Center for Reproductive Medicine in Mobile, Alabama. Two families, the LePage and Asen families, lost embryos that day, and their journey to justice sparked a hotly contested discussion around the age-old question: when exactly does life begin? The Mobile Circuit Court dismissed the wrongful death and negligence claims, concluding that the frozen embryos did not fit the definition of a person or child, and the wrongful death claim would not apply. Appealed to the Alabama Supreme Court, they reversed the lower court's dismissal, stating that the Wrongful Death Act applies to all unborn children, no matter where they are physically located. In part, this decision supports the protection of unborn embryos and allows parents to sue over the death of an unborn child, including frozen embryos. Now, if you don't live in Alabama and you're wondering how this decision could impact you, you're probably not alone. What impact could a ruling in a small southern state and application of a 152-year-old state law have on the rest of the country? Much more than you may ever really thought. Here's why. The two justices who penned opinions in this case based their opinions on biblical passages as the basis for setting a legal ruling on when life begins. Justice J. Mitchell wrote in the opinion that an unborn child is a child, without any exception based on developmental stage, physical location, or any other characteristics, concluding that nothing would, therefore, exclude unborn children located outside the uterus from coverage under the law. Similarly, Chief Justice Tom Parker, who mentioned that the Alabama Supreme Court has always supported the belief that unborn children are children, agreed with this ruling as, quote, the theologically based view of the sanctity of life adopted by the people of Alabama that encompasses the following. 1. God made every person in his image. 2. Each person therefore has a value that far exceeds the ability of human beings to calculate. And 3. Human life cannot be wrongfully destroyed without incurring the wrath of a holy God who views the destruction of his image as an affront to himself. End quote. This ruling and the application of biblical law definitely blurred the separation of church and state, imposing religious beliefs on everyone, believers or not. But Alabama voters agreed and should be allowed to live under the rule of law the majority support. In most ways, I agree with that sentiment, but to me the impact of this ruling really has to do with the what else factor, and how the religious beliefs of the presiding judge are already influencing seemingly unrelated areas in multiple states. What's more, the influence in these unrelated areas has yet to be fully realized or imagined. Justice Tom Parker is a devout Christian nationalist, a member of the Seven Mountains Mandate, and routinely applies Christian principles to all of his rulings. The Seven Mountains Mandate is a dominionist movement that seeks to create a nation of laws governed by Christians and based on their understanding of biblical law. I hadn't heard of them until researching this video, but some pretty influential politicians are members. More on their potential influence in a few. Parker's belief is that God created government, and the fact that we have let it go into the possession of others is heartbreaking. That's why God is calling and equipping people to step back into these mountains right now. God created government. More accurately, I think he meant God created man, man created government, but that's not what he, in his role as the Alabama Supreme Court Justice, said. The tenets of the Seven Mountains Mandate is where this ruling could impact us all. The Seven Mountains Mandate is a Christian nationalist group who believe there are 7 aspects of society that they seek to influence: family, religion, education, media, entertainment, business, and government. Some prominent followers of the Seven Mountains Mandate include Michelle Bachmann, Lauren Boebert, Rafael Cruz, who's the pastor and father of Senator Ted Cruz, Mike Johnson, Tom Parker, and Paula White, who is the spiritual advisor to Donald Trump. To me, Paula White is where you can see the ripple effect outside of Alabama. As the spiritual advisor to Donald Trump, it's easy to see where his recent faith comes from, and is most likely the driving force behind the abrupt religious tone his campaign has taken. With Paula's guidance and Trump's delivery, the Seven Mountains Mandate's influence rapidly spreads, with funding and influence at all levels of the political spectrum. If you're familiar with the tenets of Project 2025 that's been making headlines lately, these 7 mountains may sound familiar to you. These are the same areas of American life that the Trumpist Republicans and Christian nationalist politicians have targeted for complete overhaul post-inauguration. These influential members of the Seven Mountains Mandate are also staunch supporters of the ideology outlined in Pillar 4 of Project 2025, which, if you remember, is the 180-day transition plan for a new Republican administration. And the other pillars of Project 2025 all outline radical changes to the same areas of influence that the Seven Mountains Mandate and Alabama Supreme Court Justice Tom Parker are influencing. So when the Supreme Court of the United States was asked to weigh in on the Alabama Supreme Court's ruling, it declined, saying it was outside their area of responsibility and they don't get involved in interpretations of state law. Which means this ruling in Alabama just created an enormous loophole for other states to create similar legislation, knowing that the Supreme Court won't interfere. The Alabama Supreme Court's decision, which found that frozen embryos created through IVF are considered children under state law, has elevated concerns that similar proposals elsewhere could manifest similar outcomes. As of February 23, 2024, fetal personhood bills have been introduced in at least 14 state legislatures during their ongoing 2024 sessions. The reach has now exceeded Alabama. The states involved include Alaska, Georgia, Illinois, Indiana, Massachusetts, Missouri, New York, Oklahoma, South Carolina, and Utah. Lawmakers behind these proposed bills can now use Alabama's ruling as precedent that an embryo or fetus should have the full rights of a person, based on the idea that life begins at conception. And the Alabama ruling takes on a much larger impact on family planning decisions, most recently in Arizona. More on that in a minute. Other states are paying attention and increasing the influence of extreme conservative views on the application of reproductive laws, specifically IVF and abortion laws. Anti-abortion activists, who have always argued that life begins at conception, are excited about the IVF decision and see Judge Parker's ruling that protects embryos as people as a golden ticket. They now have a court case decision that validates their position, and the Supreme Court that has said it won't interfere in individual state laws in this area. Remember I mentioned Arizona is also getting creative with their reproductive laws? Using a similar dusty Civil War-era law, the Arizona Supreme Court recently reinstituted an 1864 total abortion ban, overriding a 15-week ban passed in 2022, because of the underlying intent clause that was added to the 2022 bill. Basically, this clause says that Arizona doesn't replace laws that came before it. That's right. The 2022 ruling had a suicide clause built in and was waiting for precedent to be set somewhere else. The ruling in Alabama handed Arizona the silver bullet to overturn the moderate law in favor of the extreme law. This clause effectively eliminates most of the legal reasons a woman in Arizona could receive an abortion. The only possible scenario where abortion would be considered is if the life of the mother is at stake, which is unsettlingly vague. Still not for rape or for incest, not for the age of the mother. All because Alabama ruled that embryos are people. Now, happily, as of May 2nd, 2024, Arizona Governor Katie Hobbs revoked the total ban abortion law only one day after the Senate passed it. Keep an eye on this one because there's more to come. As of making this video, IVF is still legal in Arizona and other states, but this is a very fluid area of reproductive law and may change quickly. And if it changes, it's not a huge leap to think state legislatures may use precedent set in another state to prosecute offenders. Maybe Arizona would follow Texas and enact a law stating that any doctor who performs IVF or an abortion in a total ban state will face jail time. And like Texas, states could adopt laws stating that even neighbors who are aware that their neighbors are going to another state for these services could face jail time. Not sure what to think about the growing rabbit hole of laws, bills, and extreme right-wing political groups actively shaping the legal and political landscape of our country? Where else is this influence coming out of the shadows and marginalizing the rights and responsibilities of individuals? How can authors like Lance Wallnau gain such legal clout and prominence through his books about a religious belief system like Seven Mountains? How do groups like the Heritage Foundation create the foundational doctrine for an entire political party? And more importantly, where did the common sense of moderation, separation of church and state, and the freedom to believe as individuals disappear to? I am encouraged by the works of the Third Way and the Lincoln Project, who represent the nonpartisan moderates who are able to see and willing to look at both sides of an argument to find the common good. If you find yourself not fitting in with either side in the current argument, perhaps you'll find a home in the moderate camp. Normally, I would share where you can learn more about the groups or ideas highlighted in the video, but in this case, that seems irresponsible. The Seven Mountains and their followers have enough clout without my endorsement. I truly believe it's time for a more moderate uprising and encourage all of us to consider the greater good and the compromise. If you're curious about a more moderate approach, however, Amazon has a selection of options to explore in traditional books, Kindle, or Audible formats. Search by topic or title using the link in the description below. There are many more titles available beyond what I've highlighted to explore on this topic. Thanks again for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. If so, please remember to press the like and subscribe buttons and turn on notifications so you'll be the first to know when another episode drops. There are so many strange and hidden political and legal decisions being made these days. If there's something that you find curious or bizarre, drop a comment below. It may be used for an upcoming episode. Until next time, be nice to each other and don't fall asleep.